So we are on the 10th of December, no?
I guess, yes.
Eastern fucking Europe. I remember that the Soviet Prime Minister Nikita Khrushchev said something during the occupation of Eastern Berlin, that Berlin is the testicles of the Western world. When I want to make the Western world scream, I squeeze hard on Berlin.
Okay.
So pretty much this applies to the Balkans and to Eastern Europe as well. If you want to make the Western world scream, this is a very sensitive and hot spot of the European area. You squeeze on the testicles of the Balkans and of the Eastern Europe, and you get a scream in the West, both physically and metaphysically. Now, we are next to Genune, by the way. Welcome to the interview. And how is it life as a musician in Eastern Europe? And I'm asking the question in the context of nihilism, misanthropy, hatred, and also in the context of the cult of the dead, because the strange thing is that people here have a problem with Halloween, but they also kiss the relics, in Romanian, pupa moște.
Okay.
So how is the life of musician, your life as musicians in Eastern Europe?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you said a lot there already. I suppose that you can say there are a lot of cultural aspects that can influence you. So you were saying about the cult of the dead, that can be one, for example. But nowadays, honestly, I don't think there is much difference between being a musician in the West and being a musician in the East, in the sense that, leaving aside cultural aspects, you do have pretty much the same equipment, audience, the internet made sure that pretty much we all follow a certain direction, even though we are different parts of the world. So I guess you can draw from Eastern European tropes, culture and such, but the day-to-day stuff is pretty much what you would expect also from people in the West. So you find relevant people to play music with, you agree on ideas, you start writing, and eventually you release the music.
Istvan, how is your life in Eastern Europe? We are talking about Eastern European discontent, your song, by the way.
About also the as also Dragos said, now I think technology nowadays has been kind of leveling the technical aspects of the musicianship. So if you want to find information on how to play, what your style is, you can pretty much find it online. The other aspect remains, such as the cultural aspects and also your background or how you grew up. It depends also on age that you find the defining factor that still remains kind of in Eastern Europe is still your heritage or what you have experienced during your life or through the prism of also your relatives, your parents, your grandparents. So if there's a relevance in musicianship now, it's to draw on that, on your heritage. I think that our latest album pretty much summed that up.
Okay.
And it can definitely it can definitely color your interpretation of a particular genre. So again, like we play black metal, but our form of black metal is not really identical or similar to black metal played in Scandinavia, for example, or other parts of the world.
Mr.
Thank you for having us. So, my life in Eastern Europe has been pretty tough. I'm the youngest in the band, so...
Okay, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Lucky number.
Yeah. Many people say that, I don't know why, but... Yeah, so... it's been pretty tough. Like, I believe we all had like sort of tough upbringings from different perspectives, so to speak, but... in my case, it was always difficult in here to find a place for myself and function as a normal human being. So
why?
There's a lot of different areas. So professionally, I cannot function in Romania.
Okay.
And I'm an audio engineer, so
okay,
it's pretty difficult. Like the state does not recognize my profession, so
Okay.
it's pretty tough, so to speak.
All right. So the way I perceived your music, it's a music that contains a strong backbone of hope, kind of hope that people find against their better judgment, the kind of hope that people find when the last glimmer of hope seems to disappear. And it will sound like a cliche or like a stereotype what I'm going to say, but it seems to have something to do with that kind of connection between body, mind and soul. So if, for instance, you've been to hospitals or surgery, although the donor and the receiver are having the same blood type or they are compatible as far as the blood type is concerned, if the heart is not accepted by the receiver, it doesn't have that body, soul and mind compatibility, the heart transplant, for example, will fail. Do you agree that your music, despite the cliche and the stereotype, goes into this area of mind, body and soul symbiosis?
I suppose it can be interpreted that way. I think I first want to touch a bit on the compositions, on the composition matter of the band, particularly because if you think we have a bit of a hopeful aspect to the music, it's also likely because we do tend to incorporate chords and music stuff that is major keys.
Yeah,
or in,
there is an unusual, natural and emotional quality to the chords with which you play.
Yeah, so I make it a point in the band that when I write music, I don't want it to be just one emotion, for 9 minutes. So whenever we write a song, the song has to, follow sort of like a story. So even though you may touch upon like very dark stuff or very dark chords and riffs and such, I think it's very useful also for the listener and for us to express ourselves, that you also incorporate a more melodic and hopeful part, let's say, so that you can build a contrast in the music and make it a bit more interesting. And obviously, leaving aside the technical or like the musical stuff or side, in the lyrics as well, particularly on the last album, there is there is an outlook also that can be directed, let's say, to a more let's use a big word, to a more acquiescent understanding of your surroundings. So let's say we have we draw from the dreary side of Eastern Europe, at least for say the last song. At the end you have a very melodic and calm acoustic part that is supposed to settle it down a bit, make it so that you sort of make peace with it and you in a sense learn to live with it or to grow with it or live despite it even. So yeah, it can be like that if you want to interpret it.
Gentlemen, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, also what I perceived that what Dragos has touched on, that the last song has is an optimistic way of, I don't know, finishing the song, that maybe you don't get overwhelmed with it. I think most of us, even when I play and I bring my stuff, it might sound harsh on vocals, but I'm not that, I don't know, misanthropic, let's say. I'm pretty much I won't go into like optimistic nihilism, but definitely optimistic. So even though you acknowledge certain parts, emotional parts that you bring to the song and how you express yourself, it's weird to say that, I don't know, it's not that dreary, or although it might sound given each other's backgrounds, but there's always that part that brings me kind of like optimistic. That's my part.
Also wanted to touch on the chromatic side of the composition. So you said something about using a different array of chords in Janune's music. So
it's a generous, natural feeling that comes from the chords.
Yeah, it's I agree on that, because Dragos here always tends to write, like he said, with the storyline in his mind. So his use of unusual chords might be a bit like viewed like a new thing in the genre, but it's been, even though it's been used before, but in the case of Genune, I would say it's a bit more nostalgic. So he always tends to sound nostalgic in his composition, and with the use of natural minor, so to speak, like natural minor scales. He always, even in that case, where all people, when they write and they use natural minor scales, they tend to like write cliche stuff. He always like goes around them somehow. I cannot explain it. So he knows best what he's doing there.
Yeah, you're being kind. Honestly, I don't really know much about musical theory, but I go by what sounds good to my ear usually. So, and also, having done this for a while and listening to a lot of bands, it's not that I avoid, sounding like others explicitly, but like when you come up with a particular riff, you tend to recognize a particular influence in it. And if it's a bit too obvious, then you either change it or discard it or, work it a bit more.
What I noticed is Jean Baudrillard said that nostalgia recycles everything. So that's the main function of nostalgia, to recycle. But this is the kind of nostalgia that does not recycle. It kind of leaves the matter intact. Okie dokie, now let's go a little bit to the name of the band, which is Genune. Okay, and I saw your interview in the No Clean Singing.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it was a little bit of a wrong translation in there, because they translated it as precipice, chasm, abyss, or something like that. But as far as I know, Genune in Romania means a very deep and somehow misty hole that you can see from the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
That is where you find Genune. So you go on a very high, razor-sharp edge of a mountain, and downwards is the deep precipice, which is called Genune. It has nothing to do with abyssal or cavernous things like this.
Yeah.
So I think they translated wrong. It will be a cliff face, an abrupt cliff face.
Yeah.
This would be so.
Matter of perspective, maybe. Where are you looking down from it?
I'm asking because I know you are all of you are diehard Shape of Despair fans, and as you know, Shape of Despair has that motto, "Nomen est omen." It's written in the Bible. It means the name is the curse and also the destiny at the same time. So what is the, let's say, emotional and deadly implicature of this name Genune, and how would you translate it for the non-Romanian speaking audience?
Yeah, so first of all, the name came from a poem by Mihai Eminescu.
Okay.
I was in high school at the time, so that was a big name in my cultural life, let's say. And particularly, there is a poem that has a line that goes like "Funoian, fu Genune," meaning like, was there a big flood? Was there a precipice? Sort of trying to clarify what there was before creation.
Okay.
If I correctly recall the interpretation. But the point is that the name, obviously I liked the meaning, and I liked the poetical meaning more so than the proper, natural description of what a Janune is. And one more thing to say is that the name came before any of the lyrical content was ever written. So I would say that the name influenced the direction of the band more so than, us already having material that we needed to package with the name. So today, if I were to interpret the name, given again the context of our lyrics, the name, I think it's best interpreted in a psychological manner. So the chasm, if you want, or the precipice is more of a inner psychological one, if you want. not so much a natural one. So Janune as a name can be about the things we lack inside, the things we try to explore inside ourselves, the unknown within the mind, if you want to go a bit further.
Coming back to my question with the Eastern Europe, there is a saying here in Eastern Europe that you can take a man out of misery, but you cannot extract the misery out of a person. So it goes in that direction.
Yes and no. I mean, again, there is a big focus on psychological subject themes, let's say. So introspection, perception, they all play a role. And even like our last album, again, being about heritage and identity. These are not something that you find like in real life. Identity, heritage is but more so identity actually, is a mental construct. It's something you come up to understand within yourself after you perceive the world around you and you have experiences that are typical to your region or to your life in that region, and you make that conclusion. So it's a psychological interpretation more so than anything.
Gentlemen, do you want to add something to the hermeneutics of the name?
I would say like the most descriptive track that we have, in my opinion. So I don't know if it's their opinion as well, but the most descriptive track that we have regarding the name would be "To Drown Within Yourself." Mm-hmm. So it's about those precipices of the mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Islam?
Yeah. Yes, I would agree also with that name, with that description. Maybe I would just add that also some types of, it can be interpreted also that you have, besides heritage, you have also fears that you look down the precipice of your mind. Do you want to explore it or not? Do you agree with it, or do you let it through it, or you just run away from it? But pretty much what I experienced and how the album sounds and what the circumstances that we had recording it was more of like an inner journey and kind of like having a velvety thing that kind of puts on you, that it's comfortable but yet dangerous somehow.
Okay.
So it's kind of luring that you may fall into, like, I don't know, how should I put it? You may find some sort of complacency in yourself, or with some of your fears. Then again, these are not like easy things. Then you have to push through it. Pretty much. Yeah. So that about sums it up for me.
All right. Now, coming back to your style a little bit, the question will be, how would you define your style, both your poetic style and your musical style, in the sense that I know the bands hate to be labeled in one way or another, but still style description is important because it can assign a line of force or a strong vector and give the whole music a healthy conceptual dynamics. Okay. And when I reviewed your album, I labeled it as post-industrial psychedelically metalized dark metal. That was my definition again. Post-industrial psychedelically metalized dark metal, and other definitions were post-black metal, blackgaze, post-metal, and neofolk with occasional progressive tendencies. So this is a little bit of a shawarma of musical styles.
Wow,
so
yeah.
What do you have to say about it? And I will kind of ask you to insist a little bit on each term, and if possible to explain the term blackgaze.
Yeah.
That's something that is rarely talked about.
Yeah.
So let's answer the easy stuff first.
Remember, both musical and poetical style, because in your music, poetry and music seem kind of to have a healthy relationship or be part of the same game.
Well, I'll take it as a compliment.
Okay.
So on the term blackgaze, it's actually fairly simple. It's a technical term more than a philosophical one, and it's a combination of black metal and shoegaze.
Okay.
So essentially it's describing the merging of these two genres. Regarding what we play or what I would consider the band to be, I normally just say that we are a black metal band, but obviously within black metal there are bands that sound fairly different from one another. So remaining on the technical side of the discussion, I think we are a more atmospheric black metal band than traditional band, and we do tend to spice things up with influences from different genres, like Neofolk, even though I don't think it's that big of an influence.
So Blackgaze, it's shoegaze. You are looking at your shoes when you are pressing the pedal, right?
Yeah, it's mainly because of that. Yeah, because like bands that were playing in the 90s and got defined as shoegaze were using a lot of effects, like guitar effects, and you tend to look down, to use them together.
Our youngest guest, what is your opinion? You're a sound engineer, right?
Well,
no pressure, don't worry.
No pressure. It's all right. Regarding the genre, I would say that the terms post-black metal and blackgaze are used interchangeably, so to speak, but they try to express different sound aesthetics. So in the case of post-black metal, it would be like post-rock or post-metal combined with the nature of black metal.
What is post-rock and post-metal, in your opinion, of course?
In my opinion,
I'm not asking you the dictionary definition.
Post-rock and
opinion.
post-metal are genres within the spheres of metal and rock that go, like the name says, post. It goes beyond what. It goes beyond the parameters of the basic parameters of the genres, like let's say you use a different instrument, an additional instrument, or you use a different means of production, a different means of mixing and mastering.
Or you use an instrument in a different way.
Yeah,
that would be post as well.
So yeah, I would consider that post as well, because like the cliche that I see in post rock would be like guitars overly saturated with reverb. So that's a prime example of what most people think post rock is, but it goes even beyond that. So yeah, with the term blackgaze, I don't usually prefer any of the terms. Not post black, not blackgaze. They can be used to describe certain bands, of course, but in the case of Janun, I would say, like Dragos said, like we're a black metal band, and let's.
I always, when I heard about blackgaze, I thought about Sartre in Being and Nothingness. It has that gaze, and you watch somebody, and at a certain moment you realize that somebody else is watching you as well. So this is how you gain a reflexive consciousness.
Yeah. Also, the term shoegaze, like Dragos said, it was primarily used to refer to guitarists gazing down on their pedal boards, but now it could be interpreted, if you will, in a manner that would express like melancholy and nostalgia. So hence the gazing.
This is how I looked at the term, because a black gaze, a kind of reflexive gaze inside yourself, because when you're a stalker or a watcher, you have an unreflexive consciousness, but when you realize that somebody's hunting you as well, is stalking you as well, then you gain an extra amount of reflection. So this is how I interpreted black gaze before I knew the technical definition of it.
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously interpret it in a introspective manner, obviously, yeah. I want to touch upon the post-metal part of the question. I would add, beyond what he said, that also that the structure of the songs is usually not as clear or not as standard as in typical songs. So you don't really have, I mean, you can have a build-up and an explosion, let's say, but it's not really, not always a typical intro, pre-chorus, chorus, outro type music. And it's also the case with us that we don't really adhere to that type of structure.
Mr. Istvan, you are a poet of darkness yourself. This is well known, a photographer. What is your opinion upon this subject.
Okay, well,
because we listen in the car some
yeah,
sick shit doom metal where you play the vocals. So let us hear your thoughts about it.
Well, I haven't written poetry in a long, long time, and
you don't need to write poetry to be a poet.
True, I guess. What I also find a little bit, just to touch on, that we're not that gloomy and doomy. We also kind of like also the humorous side of life. I think that's one of what also, going back just a bit on your previous questions, that we have that, what Romanians say, haz de necaz, which some mostly Western cultures may be lacking. There's an implicit seriousness in Western culture. Here we have, I think that's like a coping mechanism, or just it has developed just not to go crazy by all the absurd stuff that's happening around you sometimes, or how many regimes have changed, how your life has changed, and that healthy amount of humor also has its way. So back to your question about the genres, I always thought that post-rock bands are, you can find them that avoid the term post-rock bands, that do not want to be associated in any way with post-rock. If you ask one, like, if you might label it as a post-rock band, so how is your life as a post-rock band? But we're not a post-rock band. Oh, okay. So back to that, and back to also our style. I would agree on the black metal stuff, because definitely the blast beats, the harsh vocals, the tremolo picking, definitely. Maybe my style of bass playing is a bit different. I don't know. I don't like playing it that with the tremolo picking stuff. I like to be more weighted in songs that also Dragos has preferred. Also, he gave the okay when we recorded, so kind of like wanted to stick with that and having just the regular groove within it. That also brings kind of like not just a really serious, harsh, I don't know, it's like sandpapering your ass when you're listening to it. Or so black metal, definitely maybe a bit of shoegaze. Blackgaze, I haven't listened to that much. Post-rock bands, yes, I have, but
I may comment on that.
Yes.
Again, regarding the shoegazing aspect, we don't really use that many effects, so there might be some reverb here and there, but if there is an influence from that style in our music, it's more so in the composition and less in the execution.
And talking about influences upon your style, what are your influences? But I'm more interested into the special ways in which you have absorbed those influences into your music. The music critics call this the seminal quality of influences. So,
yeah.
Where does the seminal quality of your music comes from? Is it Ulver? Is it Summoning? Or is it, of course, how is it his name? Nej from Alcest, whatever it is.
Okay.
Or Deafheaven, of course. What are the main influences in here? And also the ways in which you have absorbed those influences. This is much more interesting than just saying you have an influence, the way you absorb that influence.
Yeah. Since we avoided the lyrical aspect on the previous question, I will start with that. Like on the influences of us or me writing lyrics. Again, I would take it as a compliment that you think it's a poetic style. I wouldn't call it poetry myself. I'm fine with music lyrics.
Okay.
But like for the first album,
which is Chansol, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean, Chansol, in English?
It's more of a made-up name.
Okay.
Churn as in black, and soul as in ground or earth, if you want.
Okay. Because some of my friends have interpreted it as soul from like the Latin, so it's like black sun, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it can be that. It's even the name. I would say it's an influence, or like the choice of the name is influenced, if you want, voluntarily or not, by Dodensgaard, for example.
Okay.
They have an album called Umbra Omega. in Latin, which is not really correct Latin as far as I remember.
Latin and Greek.
Yeah, but it's a combination made up to represent the album. So in that sense, even our title can be read in that key.
It's not as bad as Ravenna Strigoi Morții from Dark Funeral in Romania, so that's a big fucking fail. So
yeah, well,
there is room for worse.
Yeah, so even that, I mean, churn wouldn't really be a word. I suppose it would be churnit as an adjective. But coming back to the lyrics, they're written in Romanian, and I suppose I drawn a bit from, I'm not sure if it's the correct term in English, but symbolist poetry. So, like, for example, in Romania we have Wachovia, which is from our hometown. That can be, if you really want to push it that far, it can be considered an influence.
It's a very interesting thing. Sorry to interrupt you. You kind of use a lot of expressionism and plotless developments.
Yeah,
in your
it's
music.
intentional. Yeah,
And intentional in the context in which you have a music centered around identity.
Yeah.
So how can you express identity without plot and in expressionist manner? This is a very strange thing.
well, it's a sum of even identity, if you want. It's a sum of things. It's not a story or one story. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like plot.
Okay,
to
so you are
things.
saying that identity has to do with the expressions, with the quality of the expressions.
Yeah, let's say that. And more so, I tend to write the lyrics more of like you would do a picture, like not picture but painting.
Okay.
And less so, proper story, because I generally don't find them to be in agreement, let's say, with what I want for the band. On the second album, lyrics again, they're written in English, obviously, this time around. And if I were to, point the finger at something, it's that I like modernist poetry.
Okay.
So like T.S. Eliot, for example, is one name that I enjoy, or poets from that time. And in music as well, I do tend to look up lyrics and appreciate them where needed. And I particularly find very capable, very well written the lyrics from Ulver,
Okay.
particularly from Perdition City. I really enjoy the lyrics from Dax Riggs, from Acid Bath and all his bands. Chelsea Wolves, they all have a particular manner of writing that appeals to me, and voluntarily or not might have influenced me. And regarding the music influences, I generally think that being influenced is a passive process. So it's like you listen to music that you like, and eventually you write your own music, and it starts to sound a bit like X or Y or whatever. And I can see in retrospective I can see influences in us from Burzum, for example, which is like
Burzum.
Yeah, I think that's the pronunciation he uses.
Yeah.
Which would be like for me at least the more important band in that particular bubble of black metal.
Gentlemen, other opinions?
Sure. I mean, on my part, they're not so, I mean, I listen to all sorts of styles. So incorporating maybe the bass element, I would even go back to like old school players like Geezer Butler or even Steve Harris, although I don't gallop on these albums. But musical influences that I bring also, like my biggest in terms of black metal is Emperor and his vocal style, Ishan's vocal style. That maybe on one point that actually it wasn't on Emperor, it was on Arcturus album. The song was called Radical Cut, And
Okay.
there he had at one point that he actually screamed so musically within the point of the guitars and the synths that I said, you can do that. You can melodically scream or grunt or growls. Like, okay, I want that. I want to incorporate that. Also in other parts, we always joked about, can you growl to an octave or I don't know. So that's one of my biggest influences musically. Also, like Ulver, yes, plays also a big part because they're constantly looking for new challenges, new soundscapes. Perdition City is one of my favorites. Also
Mine
the
even more so than black metal.
Yeah, and I find also the influences of the Gathering, Soothing, how the way they evolved and the way I evolved musically. They started also with the metal roots and then going on to trip rock, and you can find also I try to find influences a bit also outside of the metal area, although that's what shakes me up also. Like, I could never deny that.
It's what makes it different in the end. I mean, yeah, you can, as I was saying before, we have Burzum as an influence in the structural side of the music, because we also don't really write, A, B, C type music. But again, whenever you want to make interesting music, including metal, it's good that you have influences from outside that you can incorporate within the music. And I can point to one example that we did, and we're doing more on our third album. There is slide guitar in our music in Eastern European discontents. At the end, the lead is played with a slide. And that's something I took from American country music that I occasionally listen to, and I particularly like the sliding parts. And then I also found out that it's also used, or not found out, but I realized, maybe before I wasn't really aware, even though I was hearing it, that it's used by, for example, Madrugada.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that Spanish band, I suppose.
Norwegian.
Norwegian, okay.
The name is Spanish, yeah.
Yeah. The name is Spanish, it means twilight or something like that.
Yeah, if they were Norwegian,
Industrial
they would be
twilight
called
is called
SOUNDSCAPES.
Industrial Silence, I think.
Industrial Silence.
Yeah. And his vocal style is also wow. I'm never imitated, but all right, I wouldn't try it, but their sound, that it's being a band from Norway and then also recording a lot in California, I think, or Tennessee, or in Nashville. They bring that kind of like Americana to a more like northern sensibility. I think it has something that also influences us, although we're not in Norway nor in America still.
It's what I was saying before about it's coming back to your very first question about being a musician in Eastern Europe. You don't just draw from what is here,
Okay.
You want to comment?
Mr. Musical influences.
Well, you mentioned Deafheaven, so I wanted to touch more on that subject. So I would say their clean parts are like a really notable influence, and also another shoegaze band, Slowdive.
Okay.
So when it comes to the clean parts of Janun, I would say those are like clear influences, even though in the case of Deafheaven, that's a band from California. It's always sunny in there, nice. Like we try to incorporate their vibe, but like translate it to our vibe in here, and use like those same chromatics and expressions in the musical aesthetics, but adapted to our environment in here.
What Istvan said about making fun out of misfortune, we have that cemetery in Săpânța here in Romania, the Happy Cemetery or something, but that's actually a Celtic origin. This is something from Ireland or something like that. They brought it in here.
Well, Romanian identity is always ambiguous, even for us, the people who live here. So,
even that is influenced from.
And also dangerous, I would say, national identity. Anyway, what do you like so much about Deafheaven, and what's all this fucked up discussion with hipster black metal or things like this. Can you put your finger on the wound a little bit in here?
It escapes me, so
Should I comment on?
Yeah, you're the best one to comment on that because
Yeah, so
They have something against Deafheaven and against Amelie Brun from Mercure. Why all these things?
I suppose it's elitism.
Don't fucking sing hipster black metal. What is the fucking shit with that? Whoa. What is Achilles heel in here?
I suppose people tend to, defend established forms of expression within black metal and don't realize that even black metal at the time when what they're defending was new, was also, pushing the boundary. But in regards to Deafheaven, I mean, yes, they are an influence on us. I wouldn't call it the only influence. What I particularly liked about them, the innovative side of the music, was that they made black metal, for me at least, American.
Okay.
So pretty much all the black metal bands from the States that were sort of known by that point were sounding a bit European, in a sense.
Okay.
And for me at least, Deafheaven made it, proper Californian. And also, leaving aside the sunny, shoegazy side of their music, even the lyrical aspect of the band is quite complex and poetical, as I said before, and introspective in new manners. Because, like, if you look up the lyrics for Sunbather, it's not really it's not a song about being at the beach. It's philosophical in its own way.
Okay, now let's have a couple of technical questions about guitar playing in here because it's interesting things. So, as I noticed while listening to Inert and Unearing and also to Chance, so the song starts with the main riff, okay, and then the attention drops away from that main riff and is focused on the so-called new melody. But actually, that so-called new melody was already playing in the background for a while when you shifted your attention. So, as I said in my review, because of this dynamics, you don't realize the exact moment when it gets dark or the exact moment when you get entranced. This is one side. And the second side is that you have a riff and then another riff glides behind the main pulsating riff, and the two riffs intertwine with each other and give a good sound saturation. Is it a correct perception or not? So if you want, I can say it again. So you have a main riff and then your attention shifts to a second riff, that so-called new riff, but that riff was already playing in the background until your attention shifted on the so-called new riff. Or you have a second riff which glides behind the main riff and the two riffs intertwine and give a good sound saturation. Is it a correct description or is it too far-fetching?
Well, I understand what you mean, and I can put it in the context of our music. Again, coming back to influences, it's something we probably took from bands like Burzum and Deafheaven.
Okay.
In that we play a lot of arpeggios,
okay,
most of them proper, tremolo picking up and down chords. That is more typical to like Swedish black metal, for example. So in that sense, there are usually at least two riffs. When I write music, I tend to make a arpeggiated riff work like a lead.
Okay.
And then you have a background, more rhythm-based riff that completes the main riff. So thinking of one example, maybe again, is the final part in Eastern European Discontent, the one I was referring to before with the lead. When the lead ends, it's the same riff playing again for a few bars, and again it's like arpeggiated riff and then a rhythm riff behind it, and together they sort of build a, let's say, wall of sound kind of vibe. And regarding the connection between riffs, we also pay attention to how riffs connect to one another. So you're saying something like a riff might play underneath or like be, hidden before it properly gets introduced.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I've done that exactly, but what I do tend to do, which is similar to what you're describing, is that somehow, or sometimes maybe even better, tends to suggest the next riff. So the connection is done not as mechanically or as abruptly. If you tend to, go into those notes and areas that the next riff dwells in,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is a connection in how they flow, and it's intentional, but they're not really playing beneath, before they actually come to life in that sense. Yeah.
Other opinions?
For my side, being the bass player, I just supported the the main riffs. Usually I try to find the groove because it's pretty layered. Mm-hmm. And also what Dragos has described, you're also trying to find that influence. For I think the first song on the album, he said something like, can you do like a disco vibe there? Like
yeah, that's the, if I may.
Yeah.
That's basically the feel or what I envisioned in that song that would lead properly into the lead part of that intro. So like there are the two guitars playing, and then there is a tremolo picking melody that is introduced by the disco feel that I asked him to do, which is basically a how would you define it? A like run up on the scale using octaves. Yeah. So typical to like what you would listen, or like if you know the song "I Feel It Coming" by The Weeknd with Daft Punk.
Yeah.
There is that type of bass that is very disco-like, and that's something I wanted on that song.
And your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on the riffs, like you said before, there's not like a riff that's being introduced in the previous riff. I would say it's more of an anticipation for the next riff. So the songs are very fluid in that sense, and that's why I always appreciate about this songwriting. Whenever I write songs, I write riff A, riff B, riff C, and
might not be as flowy as I write.
Yeah, my writing is not as flowy as his writing, but we've kind of influenced each other across the years. So,
So how do you comment the interplays of riff in the context of sound saturation? Again, you're a sound engineer, so you need to answer. This is it's a hard question.
I would say that some harmonies in Janune's songwriting would get emphasized through the saturation of the guitar. So let's say like we have one note that's being tremolo picked, and when the other one comes and harmonizes it, like the saturation amps up.
Okay.
So that would be my explanation of that.
Thank you so much. What is the evil, diabolical and hidden side of Fragility? Or to put it otherwise, how does Abel turn into Cain?
Oh, wow. I guess
what is the dangerous side of Fragility?
Fragility is how you deal with it, how you accept it, and how you can analyze it or live it, and then find also the strength to incorporate it and maybe turn it around, that it doesn't become fragile anymore. Or there's also like the anti-fragility that some people use, that maybe it definitely can turn to the dark side, or like, I don't know, the hidden diabolical elements. But what I've lived or experienced, usually that can turn into kind of like a maelstrom of descending into more chaos, more evil. So fragility is something definitely to be dealt with in a way that you don't become, I don't know, you can incorporate that, okay, or accept it, that, okay, maybe there are some parts of fragility that leave you exposed, let's say, and it can get into a very slippery slope of maybe if you experience fragility or you sense an exposure, an overexposure of your perceived weaknesses, that it can lead to the so-called diabolical elements of, I don't know, hatred or animosity. That I don't want to use a Star Wars thing that, you know, forever it will dominate your destiny, but there's some truth to that. So it's easy to say that you can detach yourself from it or just incorporate it and find strength in other places that maybe you can turn it around. Also reflecting back on the previous questions that were also like how we perceive music, or how do we incorporate elements that Dragos has said, that you paint pictures, or I think you asked about what was the identity question that kind of like leads back also to the fragility, that if you have a non-narrative way of just having elements like in a painting, textures or colors or soundscapes in our case, identity is forged through picking parts from different areas of yourself.
Okay, you want to add something? Or?
Yeah, thinking on the hidden aspect of fragility, like the hidden danger is that maybe in the context of our music, and I'm particularly thinking of a song that I wrote, is not yet released. It's likely going to be on the third album. Fragility can expose you, let's say, to viciousness.
What makes Abel turn into Cain? Why does this happen?
Well, in the key I'm interpreting it in, there is a fragile side to each and one of us. And I suppose whenever, say, I'm exposing a fragile side of my own feelings and, experiences, that can make someone else, for whatever reason, turn into Cain, if you want to use a metaphor, in the sense that, again, coming back to the discussion about, hipster black metal.
Okay.
People defending a particular form of black metal and not accepting other forms. There is a viciousness and maybe cruelty in attacking someone for expressing their own art just because it's different from what you expected. So say, for example, I'm opening up about a subject that is important to me or is particular to me, for example, family. And I make a song about it. What results can have a form that does not reflect does not respect the expectation other people might have about the genre, causing them to turn into Cain in the sense that they can, be mean or even try to,
I think it has to do with the internal conflict of a person, because when you feel internal conflict, you resort to defense mechanisms, and defense mechanisms can lead to attack.
Yeah.
Ultimately, strong internal conflict, strong attacking answer.
Well, if I may,
sure.
Touching on that, on the internal conflict, conflict is more or less a constant in our lives. Even if the human brain is kind of wired to solve problems, to get into not getting into conflicts, but conflicts arise either way. If you deal with like your immediate needs or to resolve conflicts, and those are made safe, other smaller problems can be exacerbated in that way, that your brain also tries to resolve them or live on or thrive on conflict. So question is how to Zabel turn into Cain. It's up to, apart from being up to each and every individual, the rejection of differences definitely makes you generate conflict, because your primary need is to maybe just or attack it or detach yourself from it. It requires a certain amount of energy to understand it and document yourself on it if it's more complex, or just dwell into it more.
Can I comment one more thing? I think it's also quite unfortunate that our drummer is not here, because his name is Abel.
Okay.
We could have asked him how he turns to Cain.
Okay. Mister, your thoughts on the subject?
Well, I don't think I can add anything on the question, because the answer is better than what I could have given. So let's move on to the next one.
There are lines of defense and lines of attack of the human psyche.
The lines of defense and the lines of attack of the human psyche.
And I'm asking this one because you have a predilection to work with side notes in your music, and these kind of side notes glide towards undefinable areas, and there are electric distortions, a lot of electric distortions that have their corresponding elements in cold radiations. It's not too much of a complicated question. Lines of defense, lines of attack of the human psyche, electric distortions and their corresponding cold radiations. This is how I interpreted the music. Again, is it elucubrations on my side, or it has some sort of a fundament?
There might be something to it, in the sense that, taking again as an example our last album, the way we wrote the lyrics and the interpretation we gave to them for the audience can be, in a sense, understood as a line of defense. Because again, particularly with the last song, Eastern European Discontent, major themes within that song are how you cope, or how you even grow within your own environment, and that environment is a reflection even of your identity. So the way you come to realize things and make peace with them can be, in a sense, a line of defense of the psyche, because you cannot really have matters within your own mind that are not really resolved, let's say.
Okay. Now, coming back to the guitars, you are a master of transferring notes and transferring things from the keyboards to the guitars and backwards and forward.
More like from guitar to keyboard when needed.
Is this what keeps your music from becoming overblown, and is this how your music grows on the listener, because you know how to transfer leads and rhythms from the synthesizer, from the flute even, to the guitar lines? And this is how you gain a spacious and airy production, because you do not have a Spartan production on the two albums.
I wanted to ask, what is a Spartan production?
Pretty much like a hardcore production, like
Minimalist, maybe.
not minimalist, but if you listen to, let's say, Boltra or Napalm Death, you don't hear a guitar solo, you don't hear, it's just Spartan, the drums are Spartan and everything is Spartan, so it's to accentuate the progression, the rhythm. Very few effects, very few layers, and pushing to the level of insanity the rhythms. No mistake in there, that's a Spartan production, unlike your production, which is quite airy and spacious.
Yeah, so
this is how I would define it. Not working with a dictionary in here.
Yeah, there is a technical choice in that. I think presentation matters, so if you write music, you should record it to the best of your ability, so that whenever you present it to an audience, they have the best chance to enjoy it and understand it. So if I'm not particularly fond, for example, of quote unquote raw black metal.
Okay.
Like it doesn't take much to make an album sound decent. And obviously there might be people who go for that choice for artistic reasons they can explain, but again I think it's there is a risk that you waste your own music if you don't really package it well with good production. Beyond that, on the topic of keyboards and other instruments, I don't really have a problem with incorporating them if needed, and if I feel that they might add to the music something that the guitar cannot do. So, for example, first album, there are keys, particularly on the first proper song, Wilderness 7. At the end there are both guitars, there is a clean guitar playing harmonics, and then there is a keyboard playing in the background. And together they create sort of like a trance feeling, let's say, that I wouldn't really be able to create just with guitar, because guitar has its own harmonics and qualities. A keyboard might be a bit different and complete the sound again in a manner that the guitar cannot.
Fine. Let us take one or two songs, each and every one of you, favorite songs from Genune, and tell us what you like about it and why.
I would take almost every song from our last album, from Inert and Erring. As said, To Drown Within Yourself is also one of my favorites. Also,
So, To Drown Within Yourself, yeah?
Yeah, because it draws also on very much your introspective side.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of an inner journey of, I don't know, kind of like decomposition of yourself, just losing yourself and in your inner world. That's how I perceived it. The other part that I really liked was like Unworthy Sons and Daughters. That was also drawing on again on the nostalgia feeling and the part of like identity and heritage, what we are as offspring of, and what we bring from our upbringing, or how we evolved to be the human beings that we are today, how it has shaped us. Are we worthy? Are we unworthy? What have we done wrong? Could have been, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Mm-hmm. That part.
Okay. Dragos, your favorite song and why?
Favorite songs.
Song.
Or song, just one?
Just pick one.
Sorry.
Well, you know how everybody, whenever they
pick
release
two.
an album, they say like, this is our best album yet, and so I'll avoid doing that and go on a song from the first album.
And perhaps you want to explain, because you talk a lot about introspection. How can you deal with introspection and avoid becoming self-absorbed? That's an interesting topic in itself.
Self-criticism.
Well, I suppose self-absorption is a tag, let's say, that someone else puts on you. Mm-hmm. So I suppose that if you wrote my lyrics and didn't think I was self-absorbed, then I suppose I managed not to do it. Mm-hmm. I myself, I don't really, I haven't really thought about that enough, I suppose. The only thing I do is I do, for me, writing lyrics is probably the hardest thing in a band to do. And whenever I write something and I work with the lyrics, I try not to sound a bit too pompous. Mm-hmm. So not to exaggerate and, be overly dramatic. I like powerful images, and I like studying the meaning and the etymology of words, so I pay attention to that. But then again, I try again to not overdo it. So maybe that's how I avoid it. I don't know.
Okay.
In regards to the songs, I mean, it's difficult to choose. From our last album, I particularly liked the first one. But again, each one spoke about both of them, so I'll avoid that and go for Wilderness 7 again. Just because that song was, or has still, I suppose, very November-ish, let's say, feeling to it. It was written during November in 2017. And the lyrics, I think, are some of the best I wrote so far. And I particularly like, again, how I managed to end the song with the keys and the harmonics and all that. I think it's one of the best parts, together with the video we did, which again is not particularly good, I think, in retrospective. But that end, where there is a fade out to black and a sort of maelstrom-ish whirl of the camera, I think it's something we did quite well.
Mister, your favorite song?
Well, I also pick one from the first album, so...
From Chancel?
From Chancel, yeah.
Okay.
I would say my favorite track from that album has to be Cerul Necurmat, which I would think could be translated to The Undisrupted Sky.
Okay.
And both musically and lyrically, the song is like, I would say, in my own interpretation, it would be a description of absolute horror. Like the first lyrics on that track are regarding a wet gray, and it has like figures of speech regarding like the screeching of the teeth, rust, and all of those
Oxidation.
I would translate it differently, Cerul Necurmat. I would translate it as the endless sky or the inexorable sky, and the lyrics go like this. I translated them for Romanian. There where time is an impure liquid.
Yeah.
Rust in the bones, numb perception in an atrophied present irradiates from an intrinsic evil.
Yeah.
In everything that means pulse. But the waves alternate in frequency when the sea becomes the womb of reaction of the exit to other rooms. Let us, if you, out of coincidence, you choose this song, this was my choice as well. So
yeah, that's I would say it's the darkest track that Janun has ever put out. But for me, it's so whenever I listen to it, I feel like an impending horror above myself somehow. And it's a really transcendent track.
Okay.
Like it can be interpreted in various ways, and for me, my interpretation of it was always like it always creeped me out, but in the good sense. Like I could not at first when I heard it, I could not believe what I was hearing. I was like, "What is this?" So I had a more passive role in the band at the time of the release of Chancel. So
this is a very please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because that was the first album that maybe just looking back a bit on the history of how I got involved in this band. I was playing in another band just as a bass player and like backing vocalist. And Dragos found, because we played at the same venue. It was, I think, a competition for Wacken Open Air, something like that. And he just wrote to me that I'm looking for a vocalist, and you do some black metal screeching back at the end. So maybe you try your hand at it. So it was my first experience as like a lead vocal. Also using a lot of like harsh black metal screens, which I particularly like, given Emperor and the likes. So when that song was shown to me, I was also like grasping at it, like how do I fit these words to that chaotic nature and bring that, I don't know, I guess
unknown monster to life.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite a challenge, but what a welcome one. And because it was so complex and layered, the second album was much more fluid. We could work on that a bit more, I guess, but wow, yeah.
Alright, so this is an extremely cold fucking day and we are all terminated. There are 3 last questions.
Okay.
3 last questions. One that I need to ask you in the context of what we have already talked about, marginality, because Eastern Europe is also about marginality.
Okay.
What is the lesson of the marginals for us? What can we learn from the marginals? Any one of you can answer.
I guess resilience, I guess also because we are at the marginal type on the precipice between East and West, I guess, especially that Romania is such a guyash tokana of everything. We can draw on that. We have something that no one else has. Mm-hmm. We have that a little bit of Western seriousness, but also the Eastern way of, I don't know, having that type of humor, a bit of self-deprecating humor as well. Good puns. If you know you're Romanian, then man, you can do that also a lot. So finding these kind of like little elements of genuine, like authentic pieces that we have and no one else has, drawing from it, I think that's when you're kind of like on the marginal side. I think that can bring you a lot of plus.
Thank you. Dragos, can you please comment the same thing with marginality in the context of the lyrics from Eastern European discontent? In the afterglow of fleeing particles, there is but a tremor of events past, whose weight still burns, immediate resplendent in its lonesome present. Please, these are one of the most marginal lyrics I ever read. So,
yeah.
In the afterglow of the fleeing particles.
That's very. That was a.
There is but a tremor of past events. Come on, this is really deep fucking shit.
Yeah, I can clarify maybe how that came about. I had this image in my mind of fleeing particles from like a nuclear explosion or nuclear disaster, like you know, the industrial machinery going wrong. So in that sense, you know, those particles do disrupt the time itself. You know, that's the key.
And what does it mean, resplendent in its lonesome present?
Resplendent as in referring to light.
Okay.
And present because like you compare the past to the present, and even though the past is gone and you look at it with a in a nostalgic or with nostalgic lenses, let's say, and not because it might have been good or any other reason, maybe just because we do tend generally as humans to, you know, melancholize, if that's even a word, about the past. And the reflection with the present is that, again, taking the song, there is the ending acoustic part that is quite uplifting, and that goes hand in hand with the resplendent, lonesome present as a way of making peace, basically.
Okay.
Regarding marginality, again, I'm not sure if it's correct or not, but we do tend to say that Romanians are one of the peoples of the world that tend to, you know, just leave, go abroad. One of the biggest numbers, let's say. So there is a so exile, let's call it, is a, in a sense, is a big part in our culture, if you want. So marginality in that sense can also be read, if you want, as you know, like Romanians having to sort of cope and you know, make roots in
different cultures and
different environments. It's something I even
necessary.
experienced myself as I grew up abroad. So there was never really a sense of belonging for me, not even when coming back, because I was different from people who were living here. So that marginality is basically you being the other, in like philosophical terms, within an environment where pretty much you're not falling in line, let's say, with expectations. I don't know how to phrase it well enough.
Yeah, it's very good. So it's fighting with the expectations. Please, marginality. What do we learn from the marginals?
Well,
what is their lesson for us?
I would say, as someone who also lived abroad, like many other fellow Romanians, I had that sense of not belonging to the said country that I moved to, and when I came back here, I was like, here we go again, that feeling, like, here we go again, back to where we left off. So the marginality aspect, I felt it. I feel it in here. I felt it abroad. Like people outside of Romania that met other Romanians are not like the ones that I met personally. I weren't fond of my nationality, so to speak. So I don't tend to base my personality off of my nationality. So
you're talking about a stigma or something like that?
Yeah, I would say it's a stigma, and the marginality aspect is really strongly emphasized in here. Like, even if you try to live in here, it's and try to live your own way, different from what other people are doing, you're gonna find yourself marginalized, and usually people who live in their own way get outcast.
Ostracized.
Yeah.
So it has to do with living your own ways, following your own rules.
Yeah. So it's really difficult for us in here, and it's difficult also to live as a Romanian abroad from that perspective. From my own experience, I mean, other people might have had better experiences, but
to conclude, marginality has to do with freedom. Freedom to follow your own rules means being, in the shadows of society.
Maybe even question what others take for granted,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That turns you into marginal as well. All right, 2 more questions. From Wallace Stevens, poetry, the plain sense of things, yet the absence of the imagination has itself to be imagined. How do you comment upon that? The absence of imagination needs to be imagined as well. How do you picture or how do you imagine the absence of imagination?
Yeah, so maybe we should preface that you probably took that from me posting that.
Yes, from Facebook, yeah, right.
Yeah, because again, as I was explaining...
fucked up investigation journalist, I look for the darkest secrets of a person, taking advantage of Facebook friendship.
Yeah. So I was saying before that I enjoyed very much modernist poetry, and Wallace Stevens is one of the names.
Okay, but how do you imagine the absence of imagination?
Again, I think his poetry is always about looking inward. So, like even the discussion about marginality sort of comes into play here, because, like I was saying, questioning what others take for granted, even the mechanism of, imagining can be itself be reversed and focused on itself. So in that sense, there is a if you want, poetical, artistic, philosophical, whatever you want to call it, endeavor or attempt at understanding even the tools you use to understand the world with.
Okay, very good question, Mister. How do you imagine the absence of imagination?
Becoming a cop.
Becoming a cop.
Yeah.
Okay. Visual.
I guess when you asked that question, there was one word in my mind popping up: complacency.
Okay.
That's how I would define it. Complacency leads to that lack of imagination. It can be imagined, but yeah.
So you're talking about complacency or about marriage in Romania? Because
there cannot be exclusive, but I don't know. Never been married.
Final question: how does your personal ritual of darkening looks like when it gets dark inside yourself? Final question of this interview, gentlemen.
How do I imagine my darkening, or
no, how does your personal ritual of darkening looks like, if it's not too personal, of course?
Oh no, I guess I draw from other, in a musical sense, or
how does your inner darkness looks like?
My inner darkness, it looks very very passive usually, because there's an element of fear that I might hurt more, or that I can express some things that can later never be reversed once they've been outed. So that in that sense, my inner darkness has always been a matter of containing it, or expressing it also, like in this kind of like aggressive music. So you can draw from that type of energy, but during interpersonal relationships, try to keep as much out of it as possible. Leave that also to music, and I think that's a healthy way to cope with it. I mean, we all have our darkness, but then again, in the last times of, even during pandemics and whatnot, when we actually finished the album and wrote the album, and that was also kind of like a good way of coping with that kind of darkness. Other people I know have suffered severely mentally. I'm speaking not just physically, but it found for me personally as a way of a sense of purpose to get this material out, to recording it as best of our abilities. So that leaves me expressing it through music, letting it there, and then, I don't know, continuing.
Thank you.
Yeah, my answer is probably similar to Istvan's. I don't really have a ritual.
No, it was an inverted commas.
Yeah,
of course,
well, bad shit happens, let's say, like problems within my life, and I usually try to process those. Or like process is one word, but also purge them maybe from my mind, or like purge their negative effects from my mind by, you know, forcing that energy to go into something useful like music. So I don't really go looking for you know, stuff to play about. For example, I don't like the occult. I don't like any of those topics. I just tend to draw from personal experiences and, you know, thoughts I might have at one point or another, fears. Because again, living with, I mean, you don't have a problem for one day. You know, you have it maybe for a few weeks, for a few months, depends on the nature of the problem. So eventually you come to, you know, think about the different aspects of coping, of resolving, of moving beyond that problem. And in that sense, it can be a darkening process if you go into the darker aspects of fears that you might have about said problem. And that can find its way into music, again, as a coping mechanism. But otherwise, there isn't a ritual I go to. I just try to make something useful out of stuff that happens.
Make it philosophical.
Well, as a personal, quote-unquote, ritual, I would say that I use music composition as a way to discharge any dark or emotions or dissonances of my own mind. So I would say that's the quote-unquote ritual, like the writing process of my music.
Okay.
And yeah, whenever any sort of tragedy or calamity hits me or my life, or
You know that Anton LaVey said that the devil needs to be exorcised, not exorcised.
Exercised.
Yeah.
Exorcised.
How do you comment that as a fan of the song The Inexorable Sky?
Oh, so
How do you exercise your demonic values?
I tend to push them out of myself because I'm a pretty jolly person. So
Okay.
I tend to, whenever I feel that inner darkness building up, I discharge it into music. So it does not linger in the self for too long, because I tend to also become a dark person if I do. So I won't.
All right. So is there darkness without poetry? Or the darkness has to be poetic in order to exist?
I don't think so. No, it's fine. Yeah, but I don't think so. I think darkness can be also pretty banal.
Okay.
I think Hannah Arendt also touched that on the banality of evil. That it drives also like people who are genuinely thinking of themselves as good people, not really disturbing much or
not really doing good things.
Exactly, but they can bring a certain amount of darkness that has an impact on not just on themselves but on their surrounding, on other people, maybe even on a broader scale. So and yeah, I also thought about that right now because you asked about this the inner demon that most of us also like. We express it in music, and then I thought about. I think many people have thought about it. Okay, how responsible then would you feel that? Okay, you release that kind of darkness into music that gets to other people. What do they draw from it? Is it your responsibility what they draw from it, or do they find strength? And it's a question that I still haven't answered so far, but it stays on my mind.
You're a very ethical.
Yeah.
You're a very ethical person.
Well, if it gets to other people's ears and you wonder if it's doing them good or some form of harm, I would say that people's negative emotions can be, as expressed through music, can be cathartic to others. So your pain might be soothing for their pain as well. So
Communication between demons.
yeah, yeah. If you want to put it like that.
Final thoughts, Dragos? The very final words?
Listen to Lunember, his band.
Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you so much for the interview. Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this cold day. Keep the fucking metal underground alive.
Cheers. Be excellent to each
Cheers,
other.
man.